And we're live. Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Authors Love Bookstores, presented by A Mighty Blaze. My name is Kimberly Hensle Lowrance, and I am your host. Here on Authors Love Bookstores, we bring to you a conversation with an author and her favorite independent bookstore to shine a light on storytelling and creativity, essential parts of our culture and our collective human experience. We talk about the books written by our guest author, and we'll also discuss what makes the indie bookstore we're featuring so special. We hope you'll be inspired to read our guest author's writing, buy a book from the bookstore we're featuring, and someday even visit the bookstore when it's safe to travel again. I host and produce this show in conjunction with fellow writer Joe Moldover, and today is our 49th episode, and we thank you so much for being with us. It's also our first episode to spotlight a poet, so we're very excited about that. If you're watching with us live on Facebook and YouTube, feel free to post a question via a comment below the broadcast, and we'll get to as many as we can later on. Today, I am so very pleased to welcome, the fangirling will be large today. I'm so very pleased to welcome Kate Baer and the Midtown Scholar Bookstore to the show today. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much for having us.
So first to bios. So Kate's debut poetry collection is called What Kind of Woman? Yes, those are all sticky notes that I have put on. I have read the book several times, and I even dog-eared the page, which is kind of a big deal because I don't do that. Like, that's special when you get it done. This book was an instant New York Times bestseller. Kate is an author and a poet. She's been featured in many publications, including the Cup of Joe blog, which is where I discovered Kate, Harper's Bazaar. We're making words today. Vogue, Entertainment Weekly, Lit Hub, and so many other places. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
And then also with us is Alex Brubaker. Alex is the manager of the Midtown Scholar Bookstore in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Founded in 2001, the Midtown Scholar Bookstore has been a transformative force in its community by providing a welcoming space for the discussion and exchange of ideas about books, politics, arts, and culture and history. It's one of the nation's largest academic used booksellers, and it's located in a 1920s theater 5 blocks north of the Pennsylvania state capitol in Harrisburg. The store has everything, sounds like. Used books, new books, rare books. It has a children's wing. Is it true you have an in-store bakery, Alex?
Bakery, cafe, yep, all good stuff.
And so you can get a scone, a coffee, a book. Perfect. And the Midtown Scholar is a popular spot for authors releasing new books to stop on their tours around the country. And it's also home to the Harrisburg Book Festival. So welcome, Alex.
Thanks so much for having me.
So we should explain that, Kate, your first author event for your glorious book was at the Midtown Scholar Bookstore before everything happened, right? Or during COVID? No,
it was during COVID. Yeah, but we were on Zoom. So I was on Zoom with the Midtown Scholar. So it was kind of surreal to be back with Alex because not that long ago I was putting out my book as a debut book, and he helped me launch my first event. So it's really fun to have him back.
So what makes this bookstore so special, other than all the wonderful things I listed in the introduction: bakery, cafe, used books, new books, rare? But what makes it so special to you? Why was it the place where you had your launch and the place you wanted to feature today?
Well, it's hard not to mention the aesthetics when you talk about the bookstore because it's so beautiful, very unique, a beautiful space. I have friends who have traveled from far away just to come visit the Midtown Scholar. And when anyone is traveling through Harrisburg, I always say, you got to stop by the bookstore because just to take it in, it's really beautiful. And like you said, they have it all. It's also been a landmark for the community, a really special place and an important place. Harrisburg has, had a lot of ups and downs. If you're from Pennsylvania or this area, you kind of know that. And Midtown Scholar has just been a really unifying spot. And so I have been happy to support it and continue to support it.
Wonderful. Alex, what has it been like to run a bookstore during this past year? We know it's been very difficult. We know that bookstores are closing across the country. I think the average is like one a week. How has your bookstore been doing this past year? What's been the most surprising thing you've learned about bookselling this past year? Has there been anything surprising, I should say?
Oh my God, too many surprising things, right? No, it's been totally surreal, right? I mean, I think everyone was kind of freaking out that first month in mid-March of 2020. But I mean, how to survive, creativity, adaptation, collaboration, like our collaboration with Kate, I think was huge. I mean, What Kind of Woman is our #1 best-selling book since the pandemic hit. So,
oh my gosh,
how about that?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, collaboration with authors. I mean, Kate knows we've hosted, oh my God, I think it's been like close to 150 virtual events since the pandemic went down. And that's with our collaboration with authors and publishers. One thing is just like embracing the grind, which I know is kind of a silly thing, but like when the store's buzzing and we have author events and people are coming in and out, it's easy. It's easy to work. It's easy to find that motivation. But when you're just sitting down in the bookstore and it's lonely and empty and you're fulfilling hundreds of orders, you just kind of gotta embrace the grind.
Yeah.
But surprising thing. That's interesting. I think it's interesting. This is probably very obvious, but how much an indie bookstore means to the community and how much the community means to the indie bookstore. Like we host all these events. We have book clubs. We have meetings. We have daily interactions with customers and our staff, and you kind of take that for granted. So when the pandemic hit and that's all stripped away, like all you have is like the book as commodity. And so it's interesting, right? So like book selling is more than book selling. You know, it's our connection to the community, and I think I've really missed that and really kind of see how intertwined they are even more so.
It is true that the things that so many of us missed this past year are kind of quintessential to a bookstore, right? Like a place where you can come and you can find ideas and you can find someone who maybe shares those ideas or will challenge you, who will teach you something new. It's like you can do that home alone in front of your computer, but it's not the same thing, right? Like it's
not the same. Yeah,
it's not quite the same. And the bookstore is open now? Are you open?
We're actually still closed to the public. We're playing things really safe.
Okay.
Since we do have a pretty strong e-commerce division, that's kept us afloat. So we're able to survive here. So we're aiming for a mid to late spring reopen. That's the goal, at least.
Okay, excellent. And so, Kate, your book has the #1 best-selling book during the pandemic. For the bookstore, did you know that? You didn't know that. You just heard that.
No, for the bookstore, no, I had no idea. That's really fun. Yeah, that's so exciting.
Well, I loved this book. I loved it so much. I bought a copy for myself, bought a copy for my best friend, and then she bought copies for other people in her life. And I've heard that women buying the book and then sharing it because they found, I think they found them, or I should speak for myself. Like I know I found myself on these pages, and there's something that's really deeply felt when you can open a book and you can an experience that you thought was your own. You can see the universality of it, right? The intimate moments of our lives on your pages, and that other people feel connected to. It's quite extraordinary. And so you're going to read for us. I'm getting all tongue-tied now.
Sure.
So I'll stop there and let our audience hear some of your beautiful words.
Sure. Yeah. I was asked to read Some Nights, and so that is what I will read today. I haven't read this one in an event yet, so that's really exciting. This piece actually has the title in it. That's cool. Okay, this one's called Some Nights. Some nights she walks out to the driveway where the lilacs bloom and lies down on the warm pavement, even though the neighbors will see and wonder what kind of woman does such things. There she stares up at the slender moon and thinks about the baby albatross filled with discarded spoons, or the time a friend asked what she was working on these days, and she answered, "Who has the time?" even though she meant something else entirely. Across the lawn the crickets sing while the earth lets out its tired breath and wanders through the trees to greet her.
Thank you. So I'm not the only one who loves your book. Publishers Weekly describes What Kind of Woman as a meditative exploration of identity as a woman, wife, mother, disrupting mainstream assumptions about femininity. I wondered, when you started to write these poems, did you imagine a collection? Did you have it all sort of mapped out in your head that it would be this discussion of friendship and motherhood and marriage, or were you writing?
Yes and no. When I started out really dedicating time to poetry, I wasn't thinking about it as necessarily a book. I was just kind of writing it and seeing where it took me. At a certain point, when we submitted it to publishers, there was kind of a theme going, and over time that did come about. But initially, no, I didn't sit down one day and think, and today I'm going to write about friendship or marriage or relationships or femininity. I just, it happened very naturally, and I think it's probably pretty obvious, kind of the things that I'm experiencing and have experienced. So yes and no. There was definitely a point in writing this book where I was kind of fleshing out each part to make them equal. But as when I started, no, it wasn't intentional at all.
And so many of your poems seem to touch upon the people in your life, your children, your spouse, friends, family. How do they feel being incorporated in your poetry? Do they embrace it?
My kids read Dogman, and
new Dogman just dropped this week.
Oh, it's on the way here. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's ready for the Easter basket. That my kids don't really read my poetry. My spouse doesn't mind at all. He's pretty much an open book, just like I am. I haven't really had much pushback about that. Maybe they're just not telling me.
When I read a review, an interview actually with you, and you said that you came to poetry unexpectedly. That you said, I always loved reading poetry, but I felt like I couldn't write it. But then I kind of just went for it. I started writing and I couldn't stop. I'd never guessed poetry was for me, but it has been the best surprise. We have a lot of writers who watch our show here, and I imagine a lot of them maybe feel similarly about poetry, that poetry, that just feels very intimidating. How was it what was it the thing that finally made you decide to just go for it and embrace this kind of a voice?
Yeah. Mary Oliver had just died, and I was rereading her work and really found myself connecting to it in a different way than I had in my 20s when I had first gotten the books and was taking poetry and reading her work. I found myself really reading it differently and feeling differently about it. And so, I was working on a novel and I started cheating on it with poetry, just really to the side, really secret, and I think because there was no pressure on it and nobody knew, it was so much easier because I didn't feel like I had to fill some kind of role or be a kind of person to be a poet. It was so private. And it was just, something I was working on alone. But yeah, in general, I do think there's a lot of pressure on poets or pressure that you need to be a certain kind of person to be a poet. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I'd always imagined poets to be, a grad student wandering around Venice, smoking a cigar, just being very waspy, and I don't know. I just had a very specific image of poets, and I felt for a long time that I didn't fit that role, and so I had really just kind of tried to stay in my lane, which I guess was not being a poet, and I just kind of went for it, and it was really difficult at first to share what I was writing, but there was kind of an immediate connection between what I was writing and the people reading it, that I just kept going. And yeah, it was a huge surprise. I never would have guessed, 5-10 years ago, this is what I would be doing, but it's been a great surprise. Yeah.
So we have another poet who's involved with the Mighty Blaze. Her name is Allison Adair, and she's watching right now, and she has a question. She's actually from Pennsylvania as well, so a shout out to the Midtown Scholar as well. Yeah. And she would like to know, what other poets do you read? Who are some of your favorite poets?
I definitely a mix. You know, I love Emily Dickinson. I love Sharon Olds. I love kind of the older poets, Audre Lorde, Wanda Coleman. But I also love the contemporary poets. I don't know if you know who Olivia Gatwood is. She put out a book, I don't know, 2 years ago. That's a beautiful book of poetry. I actually have a book right here I just got. It's called, I don't know if you can see it, Black Girl Call Home. Can you see it? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and this has been really good. I got this as a galley, and it's a gorgeous book. So yeah, I think reading a mix. I have to admit I don't read a ton of male poets. There are a few exceptions to that. I don't know if you know who Ocean is, and I'm trying to think, Jericho Brown. There's a few male poets who I do really truly love, but yeah, mostly women. If I'm being honest, kind of a whole range. And oh, here's it's called Life of the Party. I'm looking over at my poetry shelf. That's what the Olivia Gatwood book is called, in case you want to check that out. Yeah, there's Chelsea Dingman. There's so many incredible poets out there that don't get a lot of attention, because I think when you think of poets, we like schools teach the classics, the classic poets who are all been dead for a long time, and I think make poetry really inaccessible sometimes, when there's just a huge range of poets and poetry out there to find. And I've been really enjoying finding them, rereading the classics, like I said, Emily Dickinson, but finding every week new people to read, and it's been great. I encourage everyone to do that. I get a lot of questions about that. You know, you're my gateway drug. Now to who do I read next? And I love pointing people in the right direction.
Alex, what about the poetry section at Midtown Scholar? Is it extensive? Like, how do bookstores sort of embrace poetry? Where does that fit in?
I was just about to ask Kate if I could go off script. Like, do you feel like poetry is having a bit of a resurgence? Because it feels like it, as a book buyer and a bookseller, seeing we devote like one of our new bookshelves to poetry, and the names you're mentioning, like Ocean Vuong, Jericho Brown, Mary Oliver, just continues to sell so well, no matter what book we're talking about here.
Gay too, probably.
Oh, Ross Gay, yeah.
He's got some incredible work out, yeah.
So there's poetry sells well for us, and I feel like especially like good, strong, diverse fiction or poetry sells really well for us. And so I guess I'm wondering from your perspective inside that kind of community, do you feel that? It's because I definitely feel it as a bookseller.
Yeah, I do. I in time, and I hate to say sounds so cliche, there's that line from Mary Oliver, in times of grief and times of joy. There's, poetry really is something I think people seek in times of grief. And I think 2020 was a time when people were looking for something consumable and comforting. And I think that poetry does that. So I do think that's part of it. But before that, I think that we were moving in that direction in some ways. I think, the internet and social media is obviously a very sharp, double-edged sword when it comes to everything. But one thing it does provide is access to different voices. And I think it's really benefited poets to be able to share different work and kind of find that. I don't know. There's a Instagram account I follow called Poetry is a Luxury, which is a line from an Audre Lorde essay. And that account, I've seen it just kind of explode. It kind of, it pulls from all different kinds of poets from all different time periods. And I see people liking and commenting on these posts saying, I've never read poetry before, and here it is, and I love this, and I connect to this, and I had no idea that poetry could be this way and feel this way. And so I do think the accessibility to it is a huge factor.
It's true, because when you think about 10th grade English class, it's all these and thous and sonnets.
Yeah, no one wants that. No 10th grader wants that.
Well, it's inaccessible in a way, and it creates this barrier and probably turns off. I mean, I've always found poetry to be something that is just scary, like, lovely to read, but scary to write, right? This idea of it sounds like very just overwhelming.
But also scary to read sometimes. There's this like stigma around it that you have to be a certain, I don't know, a certain intelligence to get poetry, which is so ridiculous. And I don't like that kind of thinking. To read it too, I think people are intimidated, and there's so much beautiful poetry out there that could connect with any kind of person. And I think that people are finding that more and more.
Wonderful. Alex, I'm curious, when people come in the store and they want a poetry book, or they buy a poetry book, I should say, do they come in wanting that and knowing that they're looking for it? Or is it something that maybe one of your booksellers directs them toward? Sort of like the path to poetry, is it predetermined when they walk through the doors, or are they helped?
I think it's for the most part predetermined that they want poetry. I think it's a little difficult to get people over to that shelf if they're not already looking for it. But yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of I mean, obviously, interacting with the customer, asking what they like, I think is going to lead us to a recommendation. But I forgot this. There's this one that continues to sell, Kava Akbar. Is it called something? Calling a wolf a wolf? I forget exactly the name, but Kava Akbar, Ocean Vuong, Thanez Smith, Mary Oliver. Obviously, all these are kind of go-tos for us, where if like someone's looking to get involved in poetry, we're kind of handing them this book. Jericho Brown, The Tradition, obviously just won the Pulitzer, I believe it was last year. So like there's some go-to poetry books that we're giving to them, to making sure they're enjoying it. And of course, What Kind of Woman as well.
Well, they haven't been in the store to get it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that your bookstore is known for is the events that you put on. And you mentioned earlier that you've done 150 live events.
For the virtual events.
During the pandemic.
Something like that. I've stopped counting after 100.
Can you tell us about a memorable live event, like one of your favorites of over the years at the store, outside of Kate's, of course?
You're saying like at the store, like in person?
Any event that you've done.
Okay.
Anyone that pops to mind, like, this is the story I tell people when we're having cocktails. Like, this is the story.
Oh man. All right. Well, okay, then I got to give a couple. But there's so we mentioned Ross Gay, and Ross Gay came out with a collection of essays a couple years ago called The Book of Delights. And Ross has some family in the area in Harrisburg, family and friends from Harrisburg. And so he came in, and we had there was 200 or so people in the store. Like, the store's really big, so we can really pack it in. And there's something about people that enjoy poetry, and the book was called The Book of Delights. So I feel like they're going to experience joy. It's the first time I've met Ross. He got up there and he just absolutely killed it. Like, he is hilarious, and he has a presence about him. And my little secret as an event coordinator when I host events is I actually don't pay attention to the author speaking, because I'm so focused on running the event and making sure the sound smooth. I mean, I catch little bits here and there, but Ross, I was an attendee, front row, just hands on my face, just totally enraptured with him. So Ross Gay, and 200 people all cackling at Ross's words. It was a really unique and awesome experience that I'll never forget. It kind of reminded me why this is why we do what we do. The other one I'll just briefly mention is we hosted Nick Foles, the Super Bowl MVP for the Eagles, back in 2018, I believe it was, and we had 2,000 people out the door. It was the most insane event I've ever hosted, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. But we did it. We got through it. We survived.
You guys have had Madeline Miller there a bunch of times. Am I saying her name right?
Yeah, Madeline Miller. We hosted her for the hardcover, and then she actually came and interviewed Emily Wilson, who was the first female translator of the Odyssey, which was a great connection. And then we've also hosted her for a virtual event. So Madeline, we love Madeline.
I'm a fangirl of hers, so that to me is cooler than the Eagles player.
Me too. Me too. I love her books. They're tremendous. One of the things that we love about indie bookstores is the fact that you can ask a bookseller for a recommendation, and they know dozens of books that are fabulous. And so I'm curious right now, what are books that you're reading, Alex, that are must reads for our audience. We're getting some questions from people asking about what you're reading, what Kate's reading. But what, as a bookseller, you were telling us as we came on, just as we went live, you were teasing Kate and I with you have a copy of that we both want to read.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
He dangled a fruit in front of us.
He did.
So it's not out yet. I just got it a couple days ago, but here I have it here with me.
Which is why we.
He had the audacity to ask if I know who Lauren Groff is. I do know who Lauren Groff is. I have all her books. I've read Fates and Furies 3 times.
Well, I'm going to ship this to you after this. All right. Will that make you happy?
I will be happy.
After I'm done reading it, which will last me like one more day. But so here it is. It's called Matrix. This is not the final cover, but it's called Matrix by Lauren Groff. It's coming out. Publication date is September 7th, 2021. So not available yet, but you can pre-order it from your local indie bookstore.
Midtown Scholar.
Midtown Scholar. Yes, of course. So Matrix, it's like a 12th century feminist reimagining of this woman named Marie from France, and she is like ostracized by the Queen Eleanor, and she goes to be a nun. And I'm like 20 pages in. I'm really not that far in. I'm already can tell like I absolutely love it. Lauren Groff is an incredible writer, and I actually am like mad at myself for not reading her previous works. So now after this, I'm going to go and read Fates and Furies and Florida. I know I'm a bad bookseller.
I don't even know what to say about that. She has this line in Fates and Furies that says she was tired of the familiar ways of storytelling. She wanted something like a bomb going off. And that's how she is to me. That's her line, talking in Fates and Furies. And her books are like a bomb going off to me. I just, everything that she writes is incredible. Something really devastating that I learned about her was that she will write a whole book and then throw it out and then start over. That was very upsetting to hear. As a writer, I was like, oh my gosh, okay. She is a different, she's very different from anyone I've never met her, but read about. She's an incredible writer, and I can't wait to read this new book.
I was just talking with friends about the fact that she does that she writes a whole.
Can you believe it?
And throws it away. It actually felt, I was actually in pain when I heard that story.
Yeah, me too.
Because I'm sure her first draft that she disregards is like,
Yeah, it's
fabulous.
Totally pretty good. Yeah.
I've never heard that. That's ridiculous. And that's kind of upsetting. So there's all these.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fates and Furies is huge. It's like this big, and she just threw it out and then started over. And my brain can't comprehend, but I think my brain just can't comprehend Lauren Groff. I'm a major fangirl of her, so I can't wait to read it.
Well, we're all jealous that you have a copy, Alex.
Bookseller perks.
Bookseller perks. What other bookseller perks do you have there that you want to tell us about?
Oh God. Okay. Well, I've got the new Colson Whitehead.
Yeah. Again, Alex. I don't know. I'm liking you a lot, and now
this one's also very good.
You have that one too?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this one's really good. I'm really enjoying this.
Online. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll mail you two. I'll mail you 2 books now. Okay?
I'll take those 2 and consume them immediately.
But those are a couple that are coming out that I'm really excited about. But also, I just read this book. It dropped a few weeks ago. Have you guys read Clara on the Sun yet?
Not yet.
By Ishiguro.
Not yet.
Love to.
Really good. Really good. I really loved it. Yeah. So that's one we've been selling it. We have an outdoor sidewalk sale every Saturday, and this has been one of our top sellers for the past few weeks. So Ishiguro is incredible.
Okay.
What have your customers been buying this past year? We hear a lot from booksellers that anti-racist titles are very popular. Cookbooks. Are you seeing that trend? Cookbooks, craft books, and a lot of self-help books. Are you seeing that trend as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's interesting to note how I mean, it's a very obvious statement, but how book selling trends are related to the current news cycle. Mm-hmm. And so, when everyone got locked down, all of a sudden cookbooks started to increase in sales. And it's like, at first it's curious what's going on here. It's like, oh, it's very obvious. People are just cooking more and they're staying inside. Obviously last summer with the tragedy of George Floyd, we've seen just incredible resurgence in anti-racist books such as The New Jim Crow, How to Be an Anti-Racist, White Fragility, Stand from the Beginning. These are some some titles that have been just and continue to sell really well for us. But you kind of also see the opposite, right? Like I think, Kate mentioned people being drawn to poetry in 2020. Like I think I've seen that too. And I think I've seen a lot of people that don't want anything to do with the pandemic. So like some escapist sci-fi fantasy or mystery thriller or just anything that's not, or like some, even like a novel that like has some Trump surrogate as a character, like people don't want it. Right. No. So you see this kind of trend in both directions, which has been, it's been interesting. Yeah.
So speaking of poetry, Kate, you do these poems, you call them Blackout poems. Is that what you call them? Blackout poems?
Yeah. Now in that book, looks like a blackout poem. The ones I do on Instagram and the next book that's coming out, they're actually technically called erasure poems because you're erasing words to make the poem. But I know I was calling them blackout poems, which is actually incorrect for a while. But they're more like erasure poems. But yeah, that's also been a surprise. I never thought I'd be putting out a book of erasure poems next, but again, I found my way to it.
So for those members of our audience who have not yet read your erasure poems, can you explain a little bit about what it is? So you get a message from someone.
Yeah. The ones that you can see now are messages just to me. Maybe there's a few of them that aren't actually. Sometimes it's something somebody else said in the book that's coming out, which I wish I could talk more about, but I can't. This fall, I'm almost there. We're almost there with the cover. They're like Brett Kavanaugh hearings, like a transcript from that is in there. So there's other things, not just messages sent to me. But yeah, some of the ones I put on Instagram, I don't read reviews. I don't read articles about me. The New York Times just wrote a beautiful article. I didn't read a word of it, I have to admit. I don't read any of that stuff, but it's really hard not to see the ones in my inbox. And I usually just delete them. But mid-pandemic, I started to read a few. And I don't know, the words just kind of rearranged in front of me in like a fun way, just this random day. And I took a screenshot of it and kind of whited out some of the words to make a poem. And I don't know, people really connected with it. I think it just proves how many people are at odds with other people on the internet.
So you have another book coming out? You can say that, right?
I can say that. Yeah, this fall I have another, it's kind of like a little baby book that's coming out. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you also for the rest of us out there waiting for that.
It was not expected. I did not mean to write another book this quickly, but the erasure poetry kind of took off. So yeah, that'll come out this fall.
So we've asked Alex what he's been reading and what's popular at the store. Sure. And you talked a little bit about poets that you've read, but do you read fiction or nonfiction as well? Or are you a
my gosh, I'm a huge
person only?
No. I am a huge fiction reader. I have a account I dedicate just to posting about it, Bear Books. But right now I'm reading The First Bad Man by Miranda July. Have either of you read this?
No.
Okay, I'm reading that. I also have that I haven't started yet. This is called Daddy. Anyway, this is by Emma Klein. Have either of you read this? Yeah, that's my next one. I just moved 6 people into a new home, so I have not had a ton of time to read. Also, I'm up against a few deadlines, but I tried to read as much as I can. That is the #1 cure for writer's block and everything like that. So I'm making my way through this one right now, and it's interesting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you wrote a lot of this book at your local Panera.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Shout out to Paneras and coffee shops.
Shout out to Panera in Hummelstown. Love you. LYLAS. Love you like a sister. Perfect. It's amazing.
So how are you? So I imagine that Panera has been closed for several months now. So how have you been able to find a different rhythm for your creativity? You have 4 children. You just moved. There's a pandemic.
Yeah.
How are you able to generate creativity? Because this is the question we get from our audience a lot. That
Sure.
they want to know, how is it that you were able to produce 2 books during the pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote What Kind of Woman in Panera, which is hilarious, and I love it. My second book I wrote in the Panera parking lot where I used their Wi-Fi, and I propped my laptop up on the steering wheel. And I wrote that in there because I lived in a 1,200 square foot house with 6 people. I didn't have an office. I'm in my new office. That's where I am now. But I could not. I had to go there. It was really hard. It was really hard, especially when the kids were home. Now my kids are back in school, but when they were home doing virtual school, it was pretty impossible to do much. But I know that is how a lot of people feel, no matter what their job is, trying to be creative, trying just to do anything work related. So yeah, it's been a hard year for a lot of people when it comes to childcare, and yeah, I'm lucky to have my kids back in school.
Yeah. Alex, next month is Independent Bookstore Day, April 23rd.
Yeah.
Oh,
so what does
cool.
we have an audience question about that. What does Midtown Scholar do to celebrate Independent Bookstore Day?
Normally, we would host an author. We would host an author in store, and we would have a bunch of raffles and giveaways. We would have probably like a store-wide discount on all books. We are not doing that this year, but we are hosting our outdoor sidewalk sale starting in April. We're going to do it every Friday and Saturday. So we're going to do something special for the last Saturday in April. I don't quite know what it is yet, but we'll have some special deals, some special discounts. I'd love to have like an author do an outdoor book signing, but I don't think we're quite there yet as far as health and safety. And so everything is just going to continue to be socially distanced outside, and there's some limitations with that. But stay tuned to our social media accounts. We'll have updates on that. We'll probably have some announcements in early April announcing exactly what the special deals and giveaways are going to be. And I know there's always exclusive merchandise from the Indie Bookstore Day team. Again, I kind of forget what exactly it is. It's usually some cool stuff though. There's like some signed merch, some posters. So just be on the lookout on our social media accounts, and we'll let you know.
Okay. So we always ask booksellers this question to finish a sentence for us. Running a successful bookstore is part hard work, part luck, and part what else?
Say it one more time.
Running a successful bookstore is part hard work, part luck, and what else?
Ooh. Let's go like teamwork, collaboration.
Right.
I think that's really that's been huge for us. I mean, since the pandemic, I kind of talked about this earlier, but working with people like Kate has been like so awesome. Like I said, #1 bestseller during the pandemic. That doesn't happen without being open to partnerships and collaboration. And so whether it's working with a nonprofit organization around the area, whether it's working with the publishers or authors or the community members, really anything we can do to generate interest and spark some kind of creative ideas. We all kind of need to work together, and recognizing the importance of our place in the community, you need to be collaborative.
Yeah, excellent. Kate, any last stories that you want to share about Midtown Scholar before we come to the end of our program? Anything?
I just have love and gratitude. They've been really plugging away and been super safe, while also promoting authors and still being such a cornerstone for the community. If anyone is ever driving through by Harrisburg, it's pretty quick off the exit. I highly recommend stopping by there. And if you can't stop by, supporting them through online purchases. They're great to work with. I know Alex gets lots of special customer emails we've discussed before, and he deals with those with such grace and love. So yeah, I have nothing but love, and I'm so happy that I get to, I'm close enough to stop by.
Excellent. So go ahead. No, go ahead.
Have we mentioned that the Midtown Scholar has exclusive signed copies of Kate's book? I don't know if we did. We have signed copies.
They're the only place that has them. So I keep that in my bio at all times to get signed copies. But yeah, please.
So if you're ordering through us, it's going to be a signed copy.
It's
I
going to
got
be fantastic.
the bookseller in me just has to make that extra plug there.
Sweet.
No, I was just going to say that. I'm really glad that you did. And we put the link below the broadcast so you can order Kate's book directly from Midtown Scholar. You also can order any of the books that Kate and Alex have mentioned today, including you can pre-order that Lauren Groff book that I'm salivating over, and the Colson Whitehead and everything else that was mentioned, and all the poets that Kate talked about as well.
Yeah.
And this we'll put the bookstore back up on the screen so everyone can check it out. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, the two of you, for being with us today.
It was so fun.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks.
I loved this book. I love your bookstore, Alex, even though I've never been, and someday now I will drive across the country, go to Harrisburg and check it out. But I really love this book so much. And if you're watching and you've not read it, this is the perfect book to buy for yourself, your girlfriend, your mother. Your Mother's Day is coming up. Easter is coming up. I'm a person who believes you do not need a holiday to buy a book. But if you are someone who feels like you need an occasion, there are plenty of coming up. And this is such an important book. And I think it's a book where people will find solace and joy and will find themselves. So definitely something to check out. Thank you so much, Kate and Alex, for being with us. So grateful. Book lovers, be sure to check out Kate online at katebaer.com. Also follow her on Instagram and Twitter. Find out more about her new book that's coming out this fall that we will all pre-order as soon as we can from Midtown Scholar. And of course, go to midtownscholar.com to learn more about the bookstore. And if you like today's conversation about poetry, we do have another show here on the Mighty Blaze called Poets in Conversation, hosted by Allison Adair, who asked the question earlier in the broadcast, and that their next show is tomorrow at 4 p.m. here on the Mighty Blaze.
Cool.
So consider checking that out. I know I checked with Allison first because I wanted to be respectful. I checked with her first to see if I could invite you on my show. So I was going to have to duke it out, but she was gracious. So definitely check that out. And if you enjoyed what you heard, we also have a newsletter for all of the Mighty Blaze's programs, and you can subscribe to that at amightyblaze.com. And we'll be back here next Wednesday at 4 p.m. for another episode of Authors Love Bookstores. Please join us then. Until then, be well and keep reading. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.